Good morning, this is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update video for August 25th, 8:30 a.m. We're watching Tropical Storm Isaac in the windward passage. Here is the best performing model map on the front page of Hurricane City, showing the models basically taking this system just north of the northeast tip of Cuba and then traveling through the Florida Straits where there's very warm sea surface temperatures. I'll show you that map toward the end of the video update here. And then takes the system into the Florida Keys, somewhere between Key West and Key Largo, and then into the Gulf of Mexico, where it's traveled up the eastern Gulf towards possibly Apalachicola, or somewhere in this range here is what the consensus of models are saying. Now, there's some models all the way over towards Louisiana, and there are some models that are taking it right over the peninsula. So there's a lot of uncertainty here still. Even though the cone has shrunk a little bit, there's a little bit of a relocation going on with the center of this thing, and I'll show you a radar in just a few minutes, and there could be some ramifications if it moves a little bit further north than what's anticipated. But pay attention to these models on the front page of Hurricane City, because right now the best performing model as of the past 24 hours is the DRCL model, and this has it going up just west of Apalachicola, Florida, as a Category 1 hurricane, 80-mile-per-hour winds. And that same model also has the system coming through the central Florida Keys on the way into the Gulf of Mexico. So everybody in South Florida, pay attention for strong gusty winds up to hurricane force on Sunday, and then it looks like this is going to be the northern Gulf Coast going out towards Tuesday or Wednesday. So everybody needs to be prepared for hurricane conditions. All right, let's go ahead and switch sources. And let's get to our animation using the HurTrack program. And we're going to go ahead and animate this. And right now, by the way, our current feature is Port-au-Prince, Haiti. They are getting heavy rain right now. Check the observations. Only east winds around 20 miles an hour. So the wind isn't a big factor for them right now. It's the rain. And we'll watch for the news coming out of Haiti. And then, of course, Baracoa, Cuba would be next. Down the lower right-hand corner of your screen, there's Baracoa, Cuba. And then the system would be scooting north of Navidad, Cuba, and it'll start continuing that northwest to west-northwest course south of Andros Island. Then it would be approaching the Florida Keys. Actually, let me back this up a little bit. We will be activating the countdown clock at Hurricane City for the Florida Keys after the system clears Cuba and gets into the Florida Straits. Then we'll begin the countdown clock, and when that aqua circle reaches your area, that means you're done. You can't do any more preparations as far as shutters and things like that if you're going to put shutters up, or you're securing loose objects outside your house. And this would be at about this would be at 5 p.m. on Sunday, and the winds would be a Category 1 hurricane at that time as it's approaching the Florida Keys. So the tropical storm force sustained winds would be too high at that time to prepare anything, so that would be by 5 p.m. on Sunday. So you have between now and then to get ready for securing any loose objects outside your house. That's for just about everybody in South Florida. Alright, let's go ahead and continue the animation. It moves through the Keys on Sunday night, and it begins to strengthen, and we have this thing just off the west coast of Florida, and then right around Monday evening is when it would be passing just west of Tampa. Now we have the RNC up there in Tampa. I guess they're planning on going through with that, so it's going to be a lot of rainy, windy conditions, but it's going to be interesting. If this system takes a course a little bit closer to the coast of west coast of Florida, it could be very interesting with surge building up, especially if we have a more powerful system than what's indicated. This could be a real problem here, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens up there with the people visiting that convention center. But if it goes further west, it might not be that big of a problem, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And then, of course, the system continues moving north. We're getting into Tuesday, and then Tuesday night, the system makes landfall going into the early morning on Wednesday in the Florida Panhandle, just west of Apalachicola. That's the official forecast, Panama City, and that's the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. This is subject to huge changes because of the fact that there's very warm sea surface temperatures and some uncertainty in how far north this is going to travel before it bends back to the west-northwest through the Florida Keys. So anyway, let's take a look at the recon. They're flying around out there, and I wanted to show you these white dots on the screen are vortex messages. Our latest message from the hurricane hunters are very light winds at the surface in the center, 35 knots, 998 millibars, so it's gone down a little bit. It was 1,000 millibars on the last pass, and now they're down to 998, so it's beginning to lower the pressure again, which means it might be regaining strength as it's approaching the northern windward passage. By the way, this is the windward passage right here, and you can see our track. If you follow the dots, it's pretty much moving almost north-northwest rather than northwest. And that also has a interesting concept for the models, because a lot of the models at this point were already taken at something like this. So unless this thing starts hanging a hard left-hand turn here in the next 12 hours or so, it's going to end up much further out over the water like this, and that could change everything as far as intensity of this system heading towards the Florida Keys. So we got to pay close attention to what the future track here holds. All right, let's get to some images. Let's get to our... first of all, I wanted to mention that we're going to have our webcam streaming here at Delray Beach. We're in southern Palm Beach County, and here's our tower cam aiming south. And we have weather observations on that right now. It's pressure's 2991, lowering, and we've had a few inches of rain yesterday. We've had a lot of squall lines coming in, and that's because we have yeah, there we go. We have the radar from WeatherTap up here, and you can see that we have huge amounts of squall line rains coming into southeastern Florida, especially the Keys are getting nailed right now, and they're going to continue to get these squall lines over the next 24 hours. But while I had that camera up, I also have an IP camera we're going to be mobilizing down in the Florida Keys or wherever this thing happens to make landfall. If it's too far south in Key West and it's not strong enough, I probably won't bother with it. But if it looks like it's going to be a hurricane or it's going up into the central or northern Keys, I might take a chance to go down there and set up the IP camera so you can watch live as this hurricane moves through. It's got sound and motion and everything else. It'll be really cool, and we'll have it up on hurricanecity.tv, so watch for that. All right, here is the water vapor loop of the Atlantic Basin, and we have Hurricane or Tropical Storm Isaac here in the Windward Passage. What's happening there is you see this trough of low pressure on the east coast of the United States, and that's beginning to pull north right now. In fact, let me stop this and show you with the red ink. We have this trough right here, and this trough is beginning to lift out to the northeast. Now, it's all a timing issue because we have this high pressure ridge that's supposed to rebuild back in. So the question is, how far north is Isaac going to get before it bends back to the west-northwest? Is a little bit uncertain at this time, but it looks like it's going to probably come out into the Florida Straits. I doubt at this time that it's going to travel the length of Cuba, even though the Euro still wants to do that, and a couple of other models. I think the H-Morph is also riding the north coast, but you know, the models have been flip-flopping back and forth between staying north of Cuba and on the coast of Cuba, so that'll make a huge difference. But the way this looks right now with the trough here, this should pull Isaac a little bit further north off the north coast of Cuba and then start heading back toward the west-northwest as the high builds in. And of course here is the remainder of Joyce out here wrapped in an upper level low heading in the direction of Bermuda. And we have a new invest out in the East Atlantic that we'll have a lot of time to watch, but the GFS does show that heading towards the Leeward Islands in about 5 days from now, so that'll be another one to watch. All right, let's get to the let's get to our next image here, and that is the close-up visible shot of Tropical Storm Isaac, and again you can see that center has just been moving steadily north-northwest or northwest, and the center is right about here right now and about to get into position to get back into the Atlantic north of Cuba. So again, that's something to keep an eye on. Again, the model tracks pretty much take it over the northeast coast of Cuba, but it might not even make it that far west. We'll have to see what happens. It might just clip the northeast tip before making it back out over the water. All right, let's take a look at our radar. We have a radar from, I believe we had a radar up here. Yeah, here it is. Let's take a look at the current radar from Cuba, and we can see the center of circulation. And again, I showed you that recon fix earlier, but there's the center right about there off the Mole St. Nicholas, that northeast tip of Haiti. And again, Port-au-Prince is back in here, and they're still getting a lot of rain, but and Baracoa is right in here. That'll probably be the next feature this afternoon, and then we're just going to start focusing on the Florida Keys as it heads off to the west-northwest. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on out in the Atlantic. Basically, we have Isaac out here in the Windward Passage. We have former Joyce in the Mid-Atlantic, and then we have potential 97L, which could be potentially Kirk. And again, the GFS takes it long range like this towards the northern Leeward Islands. So we'll have to watch Kirk. Will be the next one on the list. Here are the pressures in the Atlantic. I talked about this yesterday. This was yesterday's map. We had 1018 pressure out here, and we had 1015 in the Gulf, and we had 1017 and 1013 down in here. And usually the hurricanes, tropical storms take the path of least resistance, which are lower pressures, which would take it something like this. Now let's look at today's pressures, and here we go. We have, it's a slightly different looking map, but we have 1018 out here, and we have 1014 out here, and we have 1011 millibars and 1012 millibars over the state of Florida. So the lowest pressures right now are in the Florida Keys and right up the west coast. Now, watch these pressures closely in the Atlantic. Using the zoomed-in maps at Hurricane City, you can get the pressure readings, and the area of lowest pressure is generally where hurricanes go. So we're going to watch that closely, and it looks like the lowest pressures right now are over the west coast of Florida. Here's the upper-level winds, wind shear analysis. And we have a high pressure right over our system, which helps ventilate it from wind shear. And right now the only impediment to this strengthening is land masses. We have about 30 to 40 knots of shear out in front of this, but I think right now that's acting as an outflow channel and maybe helping to ventilate, to evacuate the air away from the center a little bit. And then this trough is going to be moving off to the northeast, so the wind shear should lessen a little bit as this gets into the Florida Straits. That's why we're indicating more continued strengthening. So what we're going to do is probably see this system go into the Florida Straits with wind shear lessening as this approaches the state of Florida. Here are the pressure maps for the Atlantic Basin, and we can see that the purple areas and the blue areas would be lower pressures, and the entire Atlantic Basin, it appears, has lower than normal sea surface pressures. And when that happens, you generally get larger systems, which is what Isaac is. It's a very large system. It's, again, that's why you've got to do more than just pay attention to the cone of error. But we have very low pressures in the entire Atlantic Basin, and that means larger systems. But larger systems take a little bit longer to get their act together, so this probably will not become a major hurricane. I'm not anticipating that, but it will be a large system and affect a lot of people, so pay attention to that. Here are the surface forecast maps from the National Weather Service. Now this is current. Actually, this is not current. This is for tomorrow. And we can see that the system is riding the north coast of Cuba. Here's our high pressure right here, 1023 millibars. 1023 millibars. Keep that in mind. Now we go out to the following day, which is Sunday, and we have 1025 millibars out here. So it's indicating the high pressure is going to build out here, which is going to shove Isaac further to the west, and there's the trough exiting stage right. So the system moves through the northern Keys, and then if we go out even further, we can see that the system is in the eastern Gulf, but guess what? The high pressure ridge out here is breaking down once again, back down to 1023. Here's a low pressure system out in here, and here is Isaac heading towards the Florida Panhandle because it's found that weakness and heading towards the northern Gulf of Mexico. All right, let's go ahead back to the sea surface temperatures and take a look at what's happening out there. And look at this. These are the sea surface temperatures in the Florida Straits, 30 degrees Celsius. That's around 86 to 87 degree water temperatures between Cuba and Florida to tap into. So this thing has a lot of juice. And again, the forecast is for a Category 1 hurricane. The Florida Keys have a hurricane warning out with a watch on the East Coast. And everybody needs to pay close attention to this. Even if you're on the eastern coast of Florida, you're going to get very strong gusty winds, 50, 60 mile an hour winds in some of these squall lines for Sunday. It's going to be a real mess down here in South Florida. Everybody needs to just stay indoors, secure your loose objects, and then all of our focus is going to be on the Florida Panhandle, and we'll see what happens down the road. That's it for now. I'll be back with another update tomorrow, let you know how we're going to mobilize and everything with the IP cam. That's it for now. Thank you again. And by the way, check hurricanecity.tv for sporadic coverage, Hurricane WatchNet, satellite images, radar, everything else as this approaches. We may or may not do a Hurricane Watch show tonight, which would be Saturday night, in advance of a hurricane. We'll have to see how this all plays out during the day. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.